I'm really happy to be here tonight. I have a soft spot for Lawrence County, I must say. Yay! Yay! Yeah, I know. It's great. I'm an archaeologist. I'm with the Department of Anthropology at IU. And over the past, about 5 years or so, I've become more and more interested in a lot of the local history, and been working at Spring Mill State Park doing archaeology there for the last 4 or so years. So in that context, I've been getting really into a lot of the documents and seeing just how rich a lot of the different kinds of documents are for letting us know about what people were actually like doing for their day-to-day work. And in getting interested in historical archaeology, my background is in technology, but I started out learning about stone tools, which are still used. You know, if you watch those grindstones go around or you sharpen your knives on a wet stone, you're still using stone tools. But my interests were much, much longer ago, 10,000 years ago in the Andes Mountains or 1,000 years ago in Mexico. But in living in Bloomington for the last almost 20 years now, I've really seen how rich a cultural history this part of the country has, with the limestone and with the influx of people coming up and settling in the time before and around statehood. So with that in mind, I've gotten really, really interested in the local area. Plus, I'm from the Midwest. I'm a Midwest girl. Grew up in Ohio, in the Rust Belt, a little different from here, you know, all factories. And factories also are dear to my heart. So I've gotten interested in industrial archaeology and taught a class in it for the first time last year. It was a huge amount of fun. And I had students going all over the state and taking pictures of factory sites and talking to people who had worked in different kinds of industry. And then I started to realize what a rich history we have and how quickly that history may be vanishing. I mean, how many people have children that work in steel mills? Not so much. Foundries, we still have people working in limestone. That's great. So some of that, you know, that knowledge is still there. But with the changeover to a service economy, we're kind of losing those people and those memories of what it's like to work in a bicycle saddle factory, for example, which my father did for years, or what it's like to, you know, to work in a factory that makes golf balls, which is one of my cousins did. And I got students interested in that too. So I had them looking at a lot of different kinds of documents that tell you about what your ancestors might have done for a living and what that tells you about people. Because when you know what somebody is doing for day-to-day, on a day-to-day basis, it gives you an idea of, you know, what kind of tools they might have had, you know, what kinds of things they might have been interested in. So that's how come I went into this sort of working lives, the working people. I mean, everybody works, right? Nobody gets up and says, "Oh, I'm going to go to play." Right? You say that? Yeah. I mean, I say that because I'm an archaeologist. It's like play, but it's still work. But at any rate, so let's talk about work. I love work. And please, interrupt me at any point. You know, I've been a college professor for a long time. I get into the spiel thing, and I keep going and going. It's like, stop.
Okay, I'll go ahead and interrupt you. I always interrupt.
Yeah, so please
interrupt. What you just said made a point, because when I was little, on the big field trip that you toured, the factory that you toured, we toured cigarette factories and distilleries.
That's fantastic.
Those were our field trips.
That is fantastic.
You would take your class on a field trip to the cigarette factory or the distillery, and And you know where I'm from, that's why. But
What are you from, Kentucky?
Well, and that's what.
Yeah, that's what.
One entire neighborhood smelled like a distillery because that's what they did there. And then the next neighborhood over was all the cigarette factories. And that's where we went on field trips. You won't have that. And you're right. I never thought about that, but that's a piece of.
That's a piece of.
Cigarette factories are going down.
Are going down the wayside, but you know.
And a lot of people's parents worked at the distillery.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Well, and Lawrence County has a large history in distilling. I mean, every little hollow had at one point.
Well, we had those too.
And not just Lawrence County either, Monroe County also. So yeah, distilling is one of those old-timey industries, and we'll talk about that a little bit here too. Left to go forward. Yes. Yeah, there's my question. Why do we want to know? Because, you know, you might have a name of an ancestor, but what does that really tell you? Okay, you got a name. Maybe you've got some dates. But if you know what those people are doing, it's so much richer. Archaeology plays into that a lot because sometimes when we're excavating a site, you don't know what people did, but you find evidence. And that's one of the ways that some of the material stuff people leave behind lets you know a little bit about what people may have done for a living, like were they a distiller, for example. I threw up here a bunch of names of jobs. And I'm sure most of you know what most of these things mean, but you know, if I gave this to a class of undergraduates at IU, how many of them are going to recognize what any of these people did? Anybody know any of these? Call out the ones you know. Comptometer operator. It's like an early calculator. It's like a manual calculator. Very cool. And you know, you could imagine whole rooms full of probably women working on those billing departments. Trouble man is a troubleshooter on a railroad. Yeah.
The Cooper, the barrel maker.
Cooper, barrel maker.
That's the same one like great grandfather.
Yeah.
What's the funambulist?
What's the funambulist?
Yes.
This is when I get to do a charade. All right. You got it. It's a tightrope walker.
What's a collier and a collier?
A collier handles coal. So somebody who handles, say you have a foundry and you have coal, you're going to have a collier who handles the coal. Yeah. A conner is someone who moves stuff. It's another name for someone who moves stuff from place to place. Carrier is like the same thing. A fuller. What industry is that in? Okay. Yeah, well, I'll think of the fuller brush man.
What is it? Textiles.
You want to say just right. Yeah, textiles. Fulling is a process that you do to wool in order to ready those fibers. Compositor is a printing. It's you put it's in printing. Yeah.
Which one?
Compositor. So sometimes, you know, you see these things, you're not going to see funambulists probably on a census for your ancestors, but if you did, you'd have a good story. But, you know, you're going to see Connors and Coopers and Carriers and Couriers and all those folks. What's a courier?
Is that two forces?
Has to do with hide working. Yep.
What?
Hide. Leather. Yep.
Would they have different names for these things in different parts?
Furs, actually.
Different parts of the country, would they have different names?
They could be.
I'm not from here.
Yeah, very easily.
I come from the suburbs of Chicago.
Oh, yeah. Okay. They very easily could have different names.
For everything.
Yeah. For everything. It's okay, I lived in the suburbs of Chicago too. So here's a nice picture of a woman at work she's a railroad worker, a signal woman, working the signals. And I was looking at this picture and I'm thinking, okay, it's 1918. How unusual would it be to have a woman working the signals on the railroad? War, yeah. Wartime occupation.
It's inside.
Mm-hmm. Pictures also, they show you so much. If you get a picture of somebody at their workplace, I mean, look at everything you see. You see how she's dressed, you see how she's moving her body, you see everything that she's working with, what's in the room. Okay, I'm going to go through a number of different resources that are particularly useful for looking at what people did for a living. One of the most easy to come by are the population censuses, and those do give occupation. I'm going to blow this up on the next page, so I know you can't squint and see that. No one could. But here's a page that it's a Lawrence County page, Marion Township with Spring Mill on it. Hugh Hamer's listed there. But just to sort of see what the kinds of industries are that you see here. Here's the occupations. This is an 1850 census. We got a farmer. Women keeping house. Mostly listed at keeping house. Children are usually listed as being at home. I guess, they're at home. I'm trying to figure out what would an alternative be. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them did go out to work at an early age. A lot of times what you'll see is often it's women who are, or daughters who are home. Here's Alfred Burton, farmer. Wife is keeping house. Here's a son who's a worker on a farm. And then a mess of kids who are at home. Doesn't give you a lot of information, but it does give you enough to get a sense of what people may have doing. Now, with censuses, never underestimate the possibility for a census worker getting bored. Or need I say maybe just a tad lazy. And very often you'll get lots of ditto marks or just everybody's a farmer. You're in the middle of Indiana and everybody's just going to be a farmer. Unless they stand out in some way. So yeah, a lot of people were farmers, but almost everybody who was a farmer also had some sort of other craft that they were good at. But with the population census, that's just one kind of census. There are two other kinds of censuses that are fabulous for learning about what people did. One of them is the manufacturing census, and these were done every 10 years along with the population census. Somebody came along and did enumeration for whatever was decided to be the particular industries that the government was interested in. So you'll see evidence for milling, tanning, smithing, wagon makers, and lots of other kinds of industries. With every census, something different might have been emphasized by the census. So your 1840 census and your 1850 census may have different categories. From your 1860 census, makes it nice and comparable. Not really. But in the more recent years, there was a lot more information generally. The manufacturing censuses were published in a summary form, and a lot of libraries have those. The actual enumerations are harder to come by, but IU has a pretty complete set, and anybody who wants to can go to the second floor and look at those. It's microfiche, so you have to have patience and spare glasses. Pardon?
What's enumeration?
Enumeration is when, that's the census process when someone comes and counts. So like if I'm the population census, you know how we do that every 10 years. And somebody might come to your house and ask you some questions if you didn't send in the form. That's an enumerator.
Okay.
For manufacturing, it's going to be somebody's going to come to your house and say, okay, Mr. King, how many industries you running here? And you're going to tell us all about your distillery and your... And we're going to ask you how many barrels of whiskey you put out. And then we're going to ask for a sample. It's a little different, be a little different now. But back in the 1850s, you know, it would be something like that. You want to know, a lot of it was, sometimes I ask myself, okay, what was the reason behind that? Well, a lot of it was because you want to know what kind of development's going on in these states out here toward the west. In 1850, 1840, 1850, 1850 in particular, you want to know, where are the manufacturers? Where are the railroads? Where are the people who can move materials across the country, across the land? So, yeah.
One of the occupations must have been a storyteller at that time, because they come out and ask you how many barrels you put out. I'd say the occupation of storytelling.
That's a good one. That's a good one, yep. Sometimes local areas will have copies of the actual microfilms that have those enumerations. They're all written out by hand, and we'll look at one. This is a manufacturing census for 1850, and I'm going to blow this up so you can see it a little better. But you've got the name of the person, you've got what the business is. This flour mill here. Sometimes I have to wagon maker. Grist mill, cabinet maker, flour mill. So definitely lots of milling, and that's the kind of stuff, sawmills, woolen mills, those are kinds of things are going to be enumerated in 1850. But it gives you a sense of, of what's going on. This is Jackson Township in Washington County. Up here at the top, that first line, that's Andrew and G. Beck. That's Beck's Mill. It says they do custom work, which is really interesting because it implies a sort of a smaller scale mill than a mill that's really producing a lot and sending a lot, out for export. Here's this blown up a little bit. You've got the name, you've got the saw and grist mill, the value of the capital invested, custom work, the energy source. So sometimes you might see water. Here we don't see water, we see horse. So that's a horse mill. And then the products are listed as lumber and flour depending on what that industry is. So those manufacturing censuses really tell you a lot. You can also, because they're done in an area, you can see where all the mills might have been at one particular time, see who was producing more than who else. And then also, there's yet a third kind of census, an agricultural census. Now with that one, the enumerator is going to come and ask really detailed information about farming. So the kinds of products, again, done every 10 years, and the categories, just like with the manufacturers, the categories can change from census to census. Again, there are summaries published. You could probably go to the summary of the 1860 agricultural census for Lawrence County and get, or you can go to the summary and you can find, the number of, say, hog producers in Lawrence County. But it's not going to tell you about an individual person unless you go back to the original sheets where the enumerator's out there asking questions. How many hogs do you have? How many sheep? How much rye did you produce? What about that field of tobacco? So they keep asking all these questions. And when I first looked at these, my mind was just like, what? There were so many different categories. You can't read it, of course. But that's one census page, and each one of those is a different category. And I'll blow up a little bit of that. Here's several of the Hamers from the 1860 agricultural census. And this is just part of it. You got Sarah Joseph, Hannah Hamer, and Hugh Hamer Sr., value of the land, and then cash value of the farms, the value of implements and machinery, and then a number of different kinds of products. Horses, asses and mules, milk cows, spelled in the quaint M-I-L-C-H way. I love that. Other cattle, sheep, and then the same group down here too with different kinds of farm products, buckwheat, orchard products. We see here that Hannah Hamer was quite the queen of butter. And I mean, who knew? And Sarah, she produced 150 gallons of wine. We often hear about, the Hamers and think about Hugh Hamer and Thomas Hamer and the milling and all of that. But what I really like about these is that you see women here. You're not going to see them so much in the manufacturing census because they mostly didn't own mills or things like that. But boy, you see them in the agricultural. And you can tell, okay, one side of the family is pulling in lumber and doing that kind of thing. The women are making cheese, making butter, keeping bees, all sorts of stuff. Here's some of those different categories that were written across that huge census. So you've got difference between Irish potatoes and sweet potatoes. That was kept separate. Molasses, sugar, honey. Huge increase in sugar production in 1860 and even after. 1850, you don't see any sugar production or sugar mills. People were converting some of their flour mills to sugar mills because
They couldn't get any from the south.
exactly, precisely. And that's where history comes in. And you think about, okay, we're seeing all these sugar mills up here. Why is that? Well, yeah, because you're not going to be able to get it from the south. So you start making it. The molasses mostly from sorghum. So growing sorghum and using that to make sugar. Wine, hops, orchard products, tobacco, butter, cheese, hemp and flax, lots of textiles. Hemp, two different categories of hemp. Dew-rotted hemp and rain-rotted hemp. I don't know the distinction But apparently in 1860, it was relevant.
What they do with it besides make rope?
Yeah, mostly rope, yeah. Rope, you can make it into cloth, but it's, you use it for rope. You need a lot of rope.
Yeah. They weren't smoking it, were they? I mean, that's not what it was for.
No, and it's, the hemp used for the fiber isn't the same quality as the cannabis some of us who remember the 70s remember.
That was like redding the flags.
Yeah,
They left it out in the weather to soften it up.
to soften it up, yeah. And, for hemp or flax, you need special tools. You need a hemp brake, something there where it's like this. If you looked at it now, you might have one here in the museum. I don't know. It'd be really cool if you did. I would love to see it. And you put the hemp or the flax across it, and then you take this lever and just smack it down over, and it breaks those fibers apart. Pretty cool. Clover and hay for animal feed, wheat, buckwheat, Indian corn, rye, oats, all different grains, cattle, swine, the ever popular milk cows, and so on. So it's, it's a lot of information. So you've got your censuses with information. Even more good information can come from tax documents. Tax documents, yes. Very important. Even way back when. This is a page that has Hugh Hamer. This is in January of 1864. It lists his distilled spirits, hogs over 100 pounds, cloth and wood. It's blown up here so you can see it better. Here's Hugh Hamer's name. I just picked out somebody that I thought everybody would know. Hugh Hamer, Marion Township, distilled spirits, wood, and the manufacturers of the sawyer, or the saw mill.
April, I comment here one thing here.
Yeah.
Hugh Hamer's grandson was one of the first owners of this building you're in right now.
Really? That's fantastic.
1908, built 1908, Hugh Hamer was grandson.
Grandson. Which Hamer, which grandson was that? I know there were many. James Frank.
Okay.
Excellent. So Charles Kramer's produces wood products, 80 Lemons of Sawyer. So you see those products there. That tells you a little bit, and you've got the quantity. So you get a little bit of an idea about what the magnitude of the business is. I found out that there are tax documents like this for essentially income on production, but people also paid personal property taxes, and you can find out about what people might have had from looking at these old tax assessments. You had to pay, I think it was 50 cents a year if you had a gold watch. Yeah. Yeah, you paid an extra tax on your gold watch.
I think that James Burton, second line, may be my great-great-grandfather.
Really? In Spice Valley Township. Maybe.
There's probably more than one, but that sounds like the right one.
Cool. That's really cool. He had cattle 6 cattle over 18 months old in 1860. So now you know something you didn't know before.
On line 17 there, what is the article or occupation for that above the blanket? Yeah,
This one above the blankets, I was trying to look that up because I noticed that too. It almost looks like CASSIMUN or something, or MAN. I haven't found what that means. Some obsolete dictionary or something was probably going to have that, if I'm getting the letters right. This definitely looks like a C, and it's definitely 2 S's.
Is this a weaver that would be making blankets?
Um, well, the blankets is actually under the same person. So this J.H. Mason and Company, that's your homework, is to figure out what that is. I wonder if that's come from that same, yeah, like an antimacassar. That's a doily, and maybe that same root. Maybe this is lace making or something. I don't know. Again, that's your homework. Figure that one out. Cassaman or something. Don't know. To keep your hair oil off the chair. Antimacassar. Yep. That pomade, you don't want that on the back of your easy chair. Anybody wearing pomade? We call it products now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another good source are licenses of different kinds. This is a marriage license, and I'm going to blow this one up too, but we have Frank, who's a buggy manufacturer. His dad was also a buggy manufacturer. He's going to marry Lulu, a daughter of a broker. But the thing that's pretty neat about these wedding licenses is that you got your buggy up here, buggy manufacturer, and then they list the parents' names and their occupations. So you get 2 generations on a marriage license. So here's his occupation. That's Frank's dad, buggy manufacturing. Pardon?
What's the date on the license?
That's 19, I think it's in the, it's 80, well, he was born in 1885. It's about 1905 or something, probably. So the wife, her occupation is just a slash mark. And, most women have a slash mark. I figure because they're just slashing at anything, They're, it's interesting, but it's from in the censuses, we saw the women were keeping house. Why they didn't put keeping house here, I don't know. In the 50s, an occupation for a woman, if she was keeping house, would be housewife. But at this time, they're leaving those blank, just along with like the girls. Lulu's mom's occupation is also the ever popular slash mark. And then her dad is a broker. We don't know what kind of broker, but he's a broker. And they're from Noblesville. So it gives you places and stuff like that too. One of my favorites, especially for the 20th century, are city directories. And I'm sure you have Bedford city directories here at the library. But these have so much. They're so rich. Most towns of any size, not only do you get occupations, you also you can find out who was living on the same street. You probably all are pretty familiar with those. But there's also the advertisements. You can tell what people had in their stores. You can tell what, see their prepared roofing and asphalt shingles. And then you've got the occupations. And it's fun. I mean, this is Bloomington, so there's a finisher at Showers Brothers Furniture Factory. Okay, that's a lot of people, of course, working in the furniture factory. Dwayne Hoffer's working for a mirror plate company. Here's the vice president and dean of the College of Liberal Arts at Indiana University, followed by a student, another dean, a stenographer, a cabinet maker, a finisher. So that one gives you your occupations pretty nicely. Oftentimes, you'll look up a person and you'll find that everybody in the family works, say, for Showers Furniture Factory, or they all have the same skill or trade or business. Funeral records, they'll give you occupation too. This is one that I found. It's a Lenwood Adams. He was killed in 1932 in an auto accident, but we're going to blow that up. And he was his vocation, traveler runner at stone mill. So he was someone who was a runner, you know, taking information and orders and stuff around the stone mill.
That's a lifting outfit. Travelers, they call it a lifting outfit.
Oh, the lifting outfit.
Like a crane, like.
Okay. The horizontal cranes. Those horizontal cranes are travelers. Yeah,
Commonly referred to as cranes.
cranes, yeah. Yeah.
The traveler, it just meant that ran on wheels.
It ran on wheels like those horizontal ones on the,
Right.
yeah. So that's a lot of information you can get from documents, different kinds of documents. Other sources that are not public records like that, everybody's got family records and pictures and things. And if you've got family pictures and you know where people worked, write it down on the backs of those photographs. Better yet, you know, scan them if you can. Most of the information about occupations and how people worked are in people's heads. A lot of it's not written down. So I know when I ask my students to go out and find someone and talk to them about their work, I had one girl who was interested in a coal mine, a strip mine, out toward Brazil, Indiana. And she put a little ad in the paper that she wanted to talk to anybody who used to work at this particular mine. And her phone was ringing off the hook. I mean, it was a defunct mine, but they were calling her and wanting to talk. So she did several interviews with people who just wanted to talk about the mine, you know, the kind of work they did. And the same thing went for students who thought finally to like talk to a grandparent or to an uncle or somebody who had worked in a factory and had really no idea what it was like to do that for a day. Especially we have, of course, students, you know, from up around Gary and places like that. A lot of students from South Bend and Evansville. So they have a lot of different, you know, can bring a lot of different stories into it. One thing I'd like to do in the future is, you know, have students create a sort of an archive of like life histories of people who were working in factories. Because, you know, the kids now, I mean, you know, they're 20, they don't even remember the Cold War. It's like you say the Cold War and they look at you funny. It's like, remember when we were afraid of Russia? I'm like, no. So a lot of great information. A lot of students were able to reconnect or really connect with relatives or people that they hadn't really thought to talk to about life histories. Great way to get information about, you know, regular people and what they do. Who thinks about that? You know, regular people. Yeah, you hear about what the celebrities do all the time, but I'm not so interested in celebrities. I'd rather know like, you know, how long did it take you to iron your clothes in 1940? That's the kind of stuff I want to know, you know. Yeah. With knowing occupation, you can also learn some stuff about what people may have had, what kinds of tools and stuff people used. I've seen the term lather in some documents. Now that can mean applying lath for plastering, in which case then you have to make the lath. This is a really old-fashioned froe or lath axe. Use a similar sort of thing to work on to make timbers for log cabins and stuff like that too. But it could also be somebody else. It could be somebody who works on a lathe in a factory. So often, you know, your historic documents are going to be ambiguous. Oftentimes people make assumptions. Like me, I make wrong assumptions. Can do that. But again, you know, we have these old pieces of equipment that really learning about them is more or less, you know, a lost art. And if you get to see millwork that runs via leather belt system and a steam engine, it's pretty darn cool. And really, really loud. So you can imagine how loud that would be. And dangerous, because everything is run on belts. So belts moving fast. People falling into belts. So I guess the bottom line is, you know, when you know what some people did, you have a much more kind of a intimate view of them. You know them a little bit better. You have a sense of maybe what they were about. If you know that you know Uncle Harry was a bartender, or actually my grandfather was a bartender. All my grandfathers were bartenders. But see, I'm from near Cleveland, so I mean, bartenders, and you know, and the moms may have been dressmakers or milliners or worked in stores or you know, had they taken a business course, maybe been a stenographer or a secretary perhaps, a teacher or nurses, not uncommon, you know, for women, even, you know, in 1900 or so, not at all uncommon. Bookkeepers, yep. They were bookkeepers. Yes, if you had a good head for sums. And then perhaps you know, became a comptometer operator and did those sums on a comptometer. Also very common, especially when you had a lot of people coming into cities. You know, urban occupations are going to be very different from rural ones. Running boarding houses. Some occupations you're not proud of, or they might be illegal. You know, are you going to, census taker going to come by and you're going to say you're a mobster? I don't think so. Or that you run a house of prostitution. Not so often. We think about all the old songs. I've been working on the railroad, and John Henry and his hammer, Steel Driving Man. We don't think about those so much anymore, you know? One of my grandfathers was a coal miner in southern Ohio, eastern southern Ohio.
Did you live long?
No. He died in 1926 at the age of 40 in a mine accident.
Oh, so it wasn't long.
With a buddy. No, the lung thing didn't get him. But by that time, he'd managed to sire 14 children.
Oh my goodness. He wasn't too tired when he got home.
Yeah, he wasn't. I guess that's right. He wasn't too tired when he was a good one.
It's been a different kind of meeting. For audience participation.
He wasn't too tired when he got home.
Brought out the best in us.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, we're not sure if my grandmother was, well, she was certainly upset, but perhaps a slight amount of relief also. He didn't have the reputation of being the nicest man either. But yeah, he was an immigrant from Slovakia. They're mean. Yeah, he had that reputation. Yeah, being mean. But But a lot of them working in the mines. But the coal company gave her a stipend and let her still live on the land because the land belonged, they had a little house, 2-room house. Well, I brought some, I want to leave some brochures here at the museum, but if anybody would like to take one home, this is some of the results of our archaeology at Spring Mill. And we've learned a lot about, been working in the Munson House, which is historically thought to have been a leather worker, and the documents kind of bear that out, but leather worker was probably there for only about 5 years, and then after that, one of Thomas Hamer's sons lived in that location. It's a different house now, but it's the location of if you know, the leather worker house at Spring Mill. There was a cellar underneath that house, and we excavated out that cellar when they took the floor out to replace the floor, and found lots and lots of stuff. Chicken bones and pig bones. Lots of chicken and pig bones. But also some things that are, that are dateable. In 1844, half dime came out. So works nicely with when Munson was living in the house between 1850 and 1855. And also an 1844 campaign token, a presidential campaign, Henry Clay, the Ashland farmer, yeah. And we found a little green spectacle and lots of slate and slate pencils. So whoever was living in there, what do you know? Okay, they're doing their sums or they're writing. Maybe kids doing schoolwork, but, your scratch pad was a slate and a slate pencil. So very likely doing, keeping track of stuff at that house. So I'll leave these here if anybody wants to pick one up, and then we'll have them at the museum. It's got some of the artifacts and things that we got out, and we're learning a lot more about the people who lived at Spring Mill. Definitely learning a lot more. And we're even finding some of the pieces of the original houses that were there. A door latch by the lower residence that's very clearly, it's like dated 1820. It's like right there, yeah, which was nice. The latch, was buried out in the backyard, so maybe when the Hamers refurbished that house, they probably switched out the old-fashioned door handle, thumb latch. The old one was discarded in the backyard, and there it was,
I might give you a little bit of worthless information at Spring Mill. You talk about the pigs at Spring Mill Park.
Oh yeah.
If you, next time you're down there, look on the corner of the mill, the big mill building, on the corner next to the Hamer house, and if you look, that corner is round.
It sure is.
All the other corners are square, and that's because of the hogs that rubbed the corner there. And they rubbed the stone off, and they made a round corner out of it instead of a square corner and stone. Next time down there, look at it.
Yeah, it's the only corner that is that way. It's pretty cool. But there's a lot of legend and stories about the hogs. But that's borne out in the manufacturing index, and it's borne out on the buildings, and it's also the pig bones are there. I mean, they're there.
Is this wild hogs or wild hogs or?
No, domesticated hogs. Yeah.
And the Spring Mill too, they didn't have a fence for the hogs. The hogs run wild, and they built a fence around the yard to keep them out of the yard.
Yeah.
And that's the reason the hogs run wild.
Yeah, what surprised me in looking at those figures for the mills is how much flour and corn. Hamer did both flour and corn. When the Bullets ran that mill at Spring Mill, they did both flour and corn. And that was, your corn was just for like people who were living in the area. It was the flour on which you made your money because that's what you would ship out. That was what was harder to come by.
That was probably considered a very big meal too.
Yeah.
Water supply.
So flour was probably a luxury for,
Definitely.
and we folks were corn-fed.
Yeah. I guess that's where the corn-fed thing comes from, is that some people could afford white flour for the, pies and cakes and whatever. Those well-off folk in Louisville who were building the sewers. Yeah, exactly. But you're very welcome. This was nice.